Chapter 27, Firelight Confessions. Lily sucks in a breath and mutters, "I wish I could leave right now. It takes everything in Freya to not say, 'Take me with you.'" Impatience blurs with hostility on Rory's glaring face, angling his body toward Merlin. "Well." Freya waits for him to say something. Anything to soften the blow. Her eyes dart between them, her mouth slightly agape. Still in shock that she's the one to accidentally spill the news to Rory. She didn't want him to find out like this. Certainly not trapped in a cave together. Merlin sighs heavily. "I wanted to give her a way out. A chance to live her life on her own terms." A pointed insult. "You don't think I wanted that too?" Rory snarls back through gritted teeth. "You don't think I feel the guilt every day of not being able to give her that freedom? You couldn't give it to her either." Freya feels a deep punch with every word at how much she loathed him for the engagement. Thinking he was enjoying it. Relishing in forcing her to marry him. This whole time he's been battling his guilt. From the moment he realized she didn't remember him. The words tumble out of her mouth. "I wanted it broken. He was only doing what I asked him to do. I thought you were lying to me. Hiding how to get out of it. I didn't realize that you felt that way." Rory shakes his head, his voice softer as he addresses Freya. "I'm not mad at you for wanting to break the oath." His tone grows sharper. "I'm mad at Merlin for not telling me. Why did you keep it a secret?" Lily keeps her eyes on the ground, but her face is an open book. Her eyes wide, her mouth in a straight line curved inward, keeping the secret at bay. She knows why, and Freya silently prays she won't crack under the pressure, spilling everything she knows. The kiss, Freya's feelings for Merlin, his declaration of love to her all those years ago. Merlin starts, and then stops, at a complete loss for words. Freya waits for him to say it, to reveal the secret he's kept for the past 100 years from Rory, that he was in love with his best friend's soon-to-be wife. "Merlin, just say it," Lily exclaims, not able to hold it in any longer. Merlin's fiery glare is now directed at her, a wordless apology on her face, for speaking up and also hiding the truth from him. "You knew." Freya interjects before he unleashes his wrath on Lily. "I told her and asked her to keep it a secret. It's not her fault." Bewildered and hurt, Rory commands, "What happened?" At one point Freya wanted to be the one to tell him that she was going to break the oath, that she wanted to be with Merlin. Now it's the last thing she wants to do. Freya desperately looks at Merlin, begging for him to be the one to tell Rory. Merlin nods at Freya. "I offered to break the oath and Freya said yes. Obviously I couldn't do it. I didn't want you to be upset after finally finding her after years of searching. That's it." Lily and Freya exchange a quick glance, both knowing he excluded a large part of the story. Unbelieving emerald eyes narrow on Freya. "Is that really it?" Freya glances at Merlin and then nods quickly. Heat returns to Rory, an orange glow forming around him. "Freya, if you don't remember, let me remind you. I know when you're lying." Said she forgot their bargain with each other, to not lie to each other. She freezes on the words, the true explanation catching in her throat. Lily erupts in frustration. "I can't take this. Please, can I tell him?" Freya's almost ready for her to be the one. Silence echoes between the four of them. Rory waits for a response, the glow of magic intensifying as he waits. This time Merlin's the one to speak. "It started when Freya regained some of her memories that day. She had one of me, asking her to break the oath back then." "You what?" Rory's eyes are wild. "I loved her, Rory. I always have. I still." His voice trails off and he shakes his head. Heat rises to Freya's cheeks as she realizes what he was about to admit. "After that memory we talked, and she asked me for help." Rory breathes out slowly. "Did anything else happen?" Freya quips. "You're asking a lot of questions. And you're evading a lot of answers," Rory replies. She can't argue with that. Freya gives Merlin a break from vulnerability. "We kissed, Rory. Now you know everything." The flames burst around the room, crackling and twisting upwards. And then, as quickly as they erupted, they die down. Rory controlling his temper. His jealousy, Freya realizes. "I didn't tell you back then because she didn't want me," Merlin quickly adds. Rory turns toward Freya. "And what about now?" She can't lie. Freya realizes the truth is ambiguous. Unsure of her feelings after the fight with Aaron. "I don't know." She refuses to look at Merlin as she says the words. So much has happened between them in such a short time. Deception, passion, secrets. Freya needs to change the conversation to steer it away from the painful topic to all three of them. Lily has been slowly shrinking into the bench, making herself small since her outburst. Now it's time for Rory to answer some questions. What were you talking about before I woke up? A different type of steeliness washes over Rory. The guilt returns to Merlin's face, his shoulders slumping slightly. Rory baits him. Are you going to tell her or shall I? Merlin breathes slowly, his voice softer now than with Rory. You know I work for Aaron, but I haven't told you how. My family has been aides to the king for generations, our powers being useful to them, our abilities to manipulate and use alchemy. But with Aaron he bound us to him. Starting with my father, and when he died, the role fell to me. What kind of binding? Freya asks, genuinely curious. And sad for him, his entire family. A bond between us of a master and his servant. His lips curve inwards as he says the words. Disgusted at them. I have to do what he tells us even if we don't want to. I can't refuse even if every instinct is yelling at me not to obey him. It's like a tug at my core. He can communicate with me and call me to his side simply by me being tethered to him. If I have children one day with my powers, they'll have the same fate. Despair for him, for his family. She isn't the only one cursed. He has a generational curse placed on him. To obey a cruel man. She shudders at the mere thought of what Aaron's made him do. She opens her mouth to comfort him, unsure why Rory would be mad at him for something Merlin cannot control. Before she can utter any words, Rory says sharply, tell her the other part. Freya's brows furrowed, wondering what more there could be. When you first arrived, Merlin pauses and looks as if he's gathering the strength to say the words. Aaron asked me to distract you from Rory. To keep you preoccupied. He had no idea of the oath. Only that he didn't want you two to fall back in love. Freya's face scrunchies, a deeper crease forming between eyebrows as she processes his words. The dancing, the time spent alone with each other. Aaron's subtle nods and looks of approval make sense now. Her heart sinks as she wonders if the new moments shared between them were simply a distraction. All of it a lie. Merlin continues. I'm the one that told him about the oath. You told him? You almost got Rory killed. Freya nearly shouts through gritted teeth. I told you I have to obey him. I don't have a choice. My family's lives. His arms clenched. His mouth a thin line cutting off the further explanation as to why Aaron's able to control him. Not just a tether binding the two, but a threat to his family. Rian. That's why I brought you to his study. Rory's golden wisps of flames rippling from his body deepened into a blood red. Nearly the shade of his hair. Even Lily looks disappointed in him. A sting of betrayal prods her, mixing with anger. Although a small part is understood. He had to choose between protecting them or his family. His father already passed and she's never seen his mother. Is it only Rian left? But it doesn't answer the other questions swirling inside Freya. Of their time together, his charming words. If her feelings for him were caused by manipulation. Freya hardens her eyes. So that's why you spent time with me? All that time. You didn't protect either of us, only in the end did you do something. Why? She knows her words hurt. Merlin winces at each accusation. Everything between us was real. Aaron didn't know about my feelings for you. Otherwise he would have never asked me. He doesn't have an answer for the other half of his question, only whispering, pleading with her to forgive him. Freya, I'm sorry. Both of you getting hurt, that wasn't my intention. I had to follow his orders. His orders he ended up defying. She can't speak. Can't think straight. She almost died, and he just stood there watching her and Rory take the beating. Her thoughts twisted and tangled into each other. Unsure what to make of the bond between Merlin and Aaron. What he's done and why he did it. Freya's face shows no remnants of the inner turmoil raging inside of her. An icy mask that she learned from Merlin. He begs. Please Freya, I never wanted you to get hurt. Well I did, Freya snaps. And he did. Her head gestures to Rory. The faint white scars visible on his chest. You should have done more. The violet eyes sag, clouding. I know. Freya can't handle this right now. She was never safe with Merlin, not with Aaron pulling the strings the entire time. Merlin suddenly tenses, his eyes bright and alert. His eyes flicker to the cave entrance. Thinking of escaping? Rory asks, disdain dripping with each word. Merlin clenches his fists, the tendons in his arms lacing around his arms. His jaw tight, teeth grinding. It's Aaron, he's calling me back. Chapter 28, The King's Heir. Freya's eyebrows rise in disbelief. And you're going back? If he calls on me, I have to go. An apology and resistance in his voice. His shoulders tighten again like chills are running up his spine. Freya feels a phantom grip of talons around her heart, remembering what it's like being in Aaron's clutches. At his mercy. Pity blooms deep in her gut, Sorrow for Merlin being tethered to a cruel man. The hurt of betrayal subsides, but the resentment is still. The frustration of not knowing if his actions are genuine or a reflection of Aaron's orders. Not able to stand up to Aaron like Rory can. Rory stands, gesturing to the door. Then go. You don't want to keep your king waiting. His jeering shifts. But don't come back. You stood there while Aaron hurt Freya. You knew you were safe and that she wouldn't be. So leave. And don't tell him anything. The amethyst eyes glisten, his lips downturned, weary and exhausted from admitting his secrets. Airing his web of plotting with Aaron against his will or not. If Aaron asks him where they are, or wants information on Freya's powers, that they're searching for the life sources between the two realms, it would be over for all of them. I won't tell him anything. This place will remain hidden from him. Rory doesn't look confident in his answer. Merlin continues. I'll find out what he knows and what he's willing to do to find Freya. The court has to be asking questions. We don't know if he would tell them Freya's real identity to get them to rally with him. Merlin turns from the three of them, facing the wall of flowing water, about to step through and then stops as Lily jumps up, announcing, I'll go too. They all whirl toward her, surprised at her willingness to join. Lily takes in their bewilderment. With us not there, he could take his rage out on those closest to us. Fear swims in her eyes. Daniel, an innocent bystander in all of this, could face the repercussions of their actions. Aaron would make an example of him. That this is what happens when you defy him. Freya nods to her, understanding her need to protect the one she loves. Lily joins Merlin at the cave opening, and I'll keep an eye on him. She gives a last encouraging smile to Freya. We'll be back soon. Their wings protrude from them, iridescent sapphire and shadowy amethyst. Within seconds they disappear through the lake, leaving Rory and Freya alone. The silence between them fills the room. Freya rubs her temples, the onset of a headache pulsating. So much information in a short time. Guilt and stress crush her insides, making her nauseous. She lifts her eyes, ready for Rory's scolding at the part she played. His back still to her, staring at the barricade of streaming water. Freya clears her throat, and Rory slightly faces her. I'm sorry, Rory. I didn't want you to find out like this. His broad chest, the linen shirt still ripped open, tore all the way to his abdomen. Freya realizes she's still in her flimsy cotton sleep clothes. She hopes there's a pile of clothes around here somewhere. A warmer outfit to slip into in the damp cave. His tense shoulders relax slightly. A low sigh escapes from his lips. Shaking his head. I'm not mad at you for what you did. You're free to do what you want. You owe me nothing. But Merlin, I never knew how he felt about you, that he loved you. I can't even be mad about that. Who wouldn't love you? Rory gives her a weak smile before it turns to a grimace. I'm angry that he felt that way about you and would still let you be hurt. He collapses onto the bench, resting his forearms on his knees. Maybe my frustration should be at Aaron, he says into the fire. I knew about the bond he forced between them, but you are more important to me. If he was the reason I lost you, He trails off. Freya wants to distract him from the thoughts, the memories of herself being pinned and helpless that no doubt play out in his mind. She looks around the cave. What is this place? Clearly a hideaway of sorts. Rory straightens, also surveying the cave. This is where I used to come to hide from Aaron. I was young back then and didn't know how to stand up to him. So, when he lashed out, I would fly here and bunker down for a few days until I thought he would calm down. Sometimes he would be calmer. Other times my leaving intensified it. I haven't been back in years after I realized he would take out his anger on someone else. I would rather it be me. Unlike Merlin, I had the luxury of being able to run away. His dad died when he was young, and the alchemist position fell to him. Tethered the moment his father's heart stopped. He was already powerful then, and Aaron took pride in it. Merlin became more of a son to him than I ever was. The question she's been wondering since meeting Aaron tugs at her. Why doesn't Aaron like you? You seem strong enough for him to be equally as proud of you. The first compliment she's ever given him. Rory chuckles darkly. Oh yes. He appreciated my skills in the war. When I was born, I inherited my mother's powers. Only an inkling of his powers came to me. The flames, as you saw. The kings in the family line have always had garnet eyes and the powers associated with it. A sign of ultimate strength, and the link of the tether to Merlin's family. I don't have that even if I became king one day. Which I'm not particularly mad at, actually I'm grateful. Aaron took it as weakness. His only son is a failure. He would beat me when I couldn't do what he did. He tried to force it out of me, making me train constantly since I was a child. He tested what I would and wouldn't be willing to do for him, training me to be ruthless like him. When I wouldn't do what he wanted, he lashed out at the ones I loved. My mother took most of his anger, despite his claims of loving her. So I gave in and I hated him every moment. Your mom, is she? Freya knows the answer before he says it with the way he talks about her. Always in the past tense, her absence in the castle is a telling sign. She died in the war, grief wavers in his voice. Not by the hands of Aaron if that's what you're asking. A rival court killed her, making a statement to Aaron, hitting him where it would hurt the most. After her death it only got worse, driving his vengeance, and he killed everyone in the high court. The king, the queen, their children, brutally, drawing out their torture before ending their lives. Nothing Freya can say will take away his anguish, losing his mother and manipulated into participating in Aaron's greed. I'm sorry, Rory. The words feeble compared to the immensity of his pain. I've worked through it. Merlin and Lily grieved with me. You helped too. His mood lightened slightly. You saw past what I did, through the broken person I was. You were vocal about your dislike for Aaron, his constant quest for power. And then it happened. His eyes swimming in a distant memory. The link broke and you vanished. Merlin's mother died in the human realm the same day, and Aaron's chance at infinite control ruined, causing him to lash out at fairies, both from his own and rival courts. Not only had it severed the powers, but the link breaking brought torment to the fairy realm. Grief and darkness. Sinister greed and cruelty by Aaron. But one part isn't adding up. The reason for her allure. I don't understand. Besides me disappearing the same day, why blame me? Freya's fissure inside her trembles at the question. Like talking about it is coaxing it out of her. Rory arches an eyebrow, respect overtaking his shadowed eyes. You were the keeper. A role that is kept hidden from knowledge for the keeper's safety. You were extremely powerful and kind. And the realm called out to you and appointed you keeper of the realms. In charge of the balance between the two realms. Freya blinks, not expecting that answer. She hadn't thought of what her role was, figuring she was only part of the court because she was tied to Rory. Not that she was the one ensuring harmony between the realms. A keeper. She starts, not sure where to go from here. What this means for her. If she was in fact the one that severed the realms in an effort to protect them. A last-ditch attempt at keeping Aaron away from the humans. You were one hell of a fighter. Rory's lips tug upwards at her surprise at his words. But your true strength lies in creating peace. Something I loved about you. The light in you contrasting the darkness I grew up in. And I believe if we find the life sources, that you're the only one who can mend the sever and connect the realms again. That's why Aaron hates you, not because you're weak. Because he's scared. Chapter 30. The Damp Cavern. Rory's playfulness leaves him, his wild grin vanishing from his face. The enjoyment of Freya reaching her powers with him disappears as he studies the additions to their group. His eyes avoid Merlin, still angry with him it seems. Daniel's mouth is still open, staring at Freya without her allure. The sharp glance from Rory's simmering emerald eyes makes Daniel fix his expression, the surprise still apparent in his eyes. Rory's eyes move to Rianne, sizing her up. She arches a dark eyebrow, a smirk purses on her lips. Both of them not backing down from their quizzical gaze. Freya looks between the two of them, wondering what history lies between them to cause the hostility between each other. Possibly Rory doesn't trust her either. Lily notices the tension between them and quickly pipes up. We had to bring them, things didn't go over that well. Her sapphire eyes slide briefly to Merlin, but Rory catches it. The pointed look in his direction, and Freya braces herself for Rory's reaction. If Merlin sold them out, she's not sure the cavern could hold Rory's rage. The slight hint that Merlin had something to do with their plans going awry causes Rory's back muscles to stiffen. He strides toward Merlin, each step a warning as he draws closer. His shoulders back, and already a gleam of his flames twist around him. Flora jumps from Lily's hand and runs to Freya, rubbing her cheek against her ankle. Freya bends down to stroke her cat, her familiar that Rory had once called her, possessing powers that Freya still hasn't seen. Freya keeps her eyes steady on Merlin and Rory, waiting anxiously for Merlin's explanation of what happened in the castle. What happened with Aaron? Rory's emerald eyes are impenetrable as he searches Merlin's aloof face, trying to glean information from the shadowed amethyst eyes. Merlin looks paler than usual, a soft sheen of sweat glistens on his face. Freya sucks in a breath. He looks guilty. Freya wishes she had a vial of the truth serum to use on him, to get the entire story, to see what Merlin is hiding behind his stoic expression. Finally the silence breaks. What did you do? Rory asks, accusation drenched in his tone. Merlin straightens and crosses his arms. A brief glimmer of pain and then a twitch of a smile on his lips. I didn't betray you if that's what you're asking. Merlin's voice is even, a slight edge in it with determination to earn Rory's trust back. We plan to stay the night, to not draw suspicion to Aaron, possibly convince him that Lily wasn't a part of it, and that I purposefully let you escape to spy and find information on the life sources of the realms. Freya stands, lifting her hand from Flora. But she knows there's a but waiting, a reason why their plan fell apart. Merlin lets out a low breath, and Lily shifts her gaze to the ground, her sapphire eyes whelming with tears and a hollow sadness Freya has never seen in them. Not her happy friend, her strong friend who has gone through so much in her life. Her shoulders sag, but Merlin responds. The state of the court when we got back. He stops. His voice breaks and Freya swears his amethyst eyes glisten. But he reins it in, choking out the words. Aaron destroyed half the village, a third of them being killed instantly. The rest left to die. His words cast a chill over the already damp cavern. Freya pushes the image out of her mind, of the hurt and dying in the vibrant village she traveled through her first day in the fairy realm. The fairy families that lived there, all of them loyal to Aaron to avoid his cruelty. But their allegiance wasn't enough. Because of Freya. Aching guilt blooms with Freya, and Flora rubs her soft cheek against Freya's legs again, as if she can sense Freya's feelings, and perhaps she can. But Freya knows that what she's feeling doesn't compare to the defeated look on Rory's face. His eyes darkened, but the rest of his face crumpled. Once again, the court bore the consequences of him leaving. That he'll never be free of Aaron. This cave, his hiding spot since he was a child, resulted in death for the defenseless. The scapegoats for the king's rage. His father's attempt to break him, after all these years still forcing Rory to succumb to his will. Rory's kindness, his empathy, has been what made him remain strong against Aaron. Freya wonders if he would ever break. And if he did, what would be the final straw to cause it? She shudders at the thought of him obeying Aaron without hesitancy. She reminds herself that he's defied him for centuries now, and that if he was going to break it would have been long ago, when his mother died or when Freya was ripped from him. It still felt strange to acknowledge her importance to him, that, in another life there was genuine and passionate love between them. When she first found out about the relationship and the oath, she assumed it was a shallow love, holding no true weight. But after everything she's seen, all that she has remembered, in her gut, she knows that their love would have endured if she had never been trapped in the human realm. This isn't the time to think of such things, not with Lily's downcast eyes, reeling from what she saw, so distracted by it that all of them still stood at the entrance drenched in the water that Lily easily whisked dry when they first arrived. Merlin brushes by Rory, who still hasn't responded to what happened at court, and that's when Freya first notices it. Merlin's limp, the pained expression, the sheen of sweat on his forehead that curled his hair. It wasn't from the guilt of betraying them. He's hurt and he flew there hurt. He carefully rests on the bench in front of the dwindled fire, wincing as he straightens out his right leg. Freya scans the pant leg for signs of blood. A weight in her chest deflates when she realizes there are no crimson stains. Freya pauses and then joins him on the bench, sitting on his right closest to his leg. She's still angry with him, feeling naive for trusting him, for watching Rory take the beating from Aaron without helping him until the final moment. Even with that, it hurt her to see him in pain. He was loyal to them, not selling them out like Rory assumed he would, protecting them, and this time, taking a lashing from who she can only assume was Aaron. He protected all of them, her friends and Rianne. His raven-haired sister lingers at the entrance, her eyes searing into Freya at her proximity to Merlin, her smirk twisting into a thin line. She struts to the pitchers filled with wine and water, and pours a generous glass of the former. Joining the bench on the other side of Merlin, she thrusts the glass into his hand. Drink this, it'll help with the pain. Merlin wraps a jagged breath and downs the glass, gulping the warm ruby liquid. He sets the glass on the ground and Rianne silently refills it for him. He grips his leg and Freya studies it, trying to understand what's causing the pain. No blood means no signs of talons used on him. His pant leg intact, no gashes anywhere on his body. The clothing isn't singed, meaning no flames either. She doesn't have to speculate any longer as Merlin gingerly rolls his pant leg up, looking he's about to pass out at every movement. Deep black bruises lined his leg from the bottom of his ankle to the top of his knee, wrapping around his leg. No tint of purple in the markings, only obsidian bruises that look like they travel further than skin deep, in the fissure of his bones and being. The darkest, the entire skin black, not just the snaking trail of bruises, lies at his ankle and top of his shin. The bone underneath jutting strangely, not breaking the skin but rather looks crushed. The knobs of his ankle are not where they're supposed to be. His shin dipping unnaturally into itself where Aaron crushed it. Nausea flows through Freya. He flew with this, he stood there and told Rory he didn't betray him. The unimaginable pain of standing with broken bones. Lily, can't you heal him? Freya breathes, not able to take her eyes off the bruises, the odd angle his bones landed. Lily's shoulders sag and she can't lift her eyes to Freya's as she shuffles to the fire, kneeling in front of Merlin's outstretched leg. Hopelessness etched in her dainty features. I tried to heal him before we left. The magic that Aaron used. She pauses, releasing a slow breath. A healer can't fix it. It has to heal naturally, not by magic. I can set it and try to ease the pain, but I can't heal it. Without thinking, Freya takes Merlin's hand in hers. His palms clammy, limp in her hands. You'll be okay, we'll find a way to fix this. Although Freya isn't sure how. Not without Lily's healing powers. Her words were meant to be comforting instead of full of hollow promises. Rianne grits her teeth at Freya's words, but her eyes flick to her to convey a different message. As if to say thank you, that all she wants is for her brother to be healed. Rory lingers in the entryway, Daniel a few steps away. Freya realizes Rory's frozen, staring at Merlin's leg. His eyes briefly shift to her hand wrapped around Merlin's before falling back onto his friend's. If that's what they still are, crushed ankle. With his life in danger, he restrains the anger she knows he still feels toward Merlin, for putting her own life at risk. He finally makes his way to the fire, his face set in a seriousness that makes Freya feel like he would be willing to fight Aaron then and there. Not just his court hurt, but his friend as well. His eyes glance between Lily and Merlin. What happened? Barely audible, Merlin responds. I broke the bond. Chapter 31. The Alchemist's Potion. What do you mean you broke the bond? Rory asks quietly. The same question was on the tip of Freya's tongue. Shock entrenches both Rory and Freya's features. The others don't seem surprised, surely knew before leaving the court. Though Lily's face pales, and Rianne's venomous attitude turns softer. They know what he went through to break it, what the wrath of Aaron looked like toward Merlin. The generational curse that was placed upon his family centuries ago. Farther back than Freya's mind can wrap around. His father couldn't break it, but Merlin was able to. He was able to break free of Aaron's grasp. She swears a flicker of jealousy flashes across Rory's face. Brief enough for the others not to notice, but Freya understood. Merlin was able to break free of Aaron's chains, not as strong as the cursed bond, but enough for Rory to feel like he can never escape it. Freya's heart aches for both of them, experiencing different types of pain simultaneously. Merlin's head dips back. His eyes flutter closed and Rianne steadies him before he falls off the bench. Merlin stirs slightly, his eyes barely open. Rianne keeps her hand around him. Her tone is sharp, orderly, but lined with a softness for her brother. You need to rest. We can talk about this after you wake up. His sweat-lined head shakes, attempting to sit up straighter. Rianne's support holds firm against him, and Freya wonders if she's the only reason he isn't completely slumped over. We could see smoke rising from miles away before we were even on the outskirts of the village. It didn't take long for the smell to reach us, of burning builds and flesh. Freya finishes the word for him in her mind. Merlin breathes a pained sigh, both from his wound and the horror of Aaron unleashing his rage amongst innocent lives. He continues. We flew through the village. Half of the village was ash, the other was filled with crumbling buildings and cries for help. Our plan was to set straight for the castle, but those sounds, we couldn't ignore them. I was able to spread a sense of ease, calming the screams enough that Lily could work her way through the injured to heal them. She stayed while I searched for Aaron. His eyes glaze over as if he could see the sight of destruction and the stench of burning right there in the cave. Freya looks at Lily, eyes wide with concern. She healed the people of the village. How many she saw? How many times her hands placed themselves over wounds, if there were some injuries that couldn't be helped? Did Aaron use the magic that stopped healing? Freya whispers if he had. There was nothing Lily could have done for the fairies. Loss and grief are apparent in Lily's features, her shoulders hunched into herself. But she shakes her head no, barely audibly replying, no he didn't, but there were so many already. She closes her eyes, her face going completely still. Daniel swiftly moves from the spot, he's been frozen in since arrival. The instinct to comfort his lover takes control as he sits beside her and wraps his arm around her. She leans into it and finishes her statement. Dead. Merlin's ragged voice speaks before the word could settle around them. but Freya still feels it like a knife twisting in her heart. Aaron horrifically murdered countless fairies over her, destroyed their homes, ripped apart families because she got away. In the castle, the fairies of the court were safe, none of them hurt but terrified. Some cowered in the hallways while I walked by, others were hiding in their rooms. But the ones I passed, they stared at me as if I was to blame, he swallowed. Whatever Aaron told them, he blamed it on us. Merlin's cloudy amethyst eyes land on Rory. Once again, Aaron used his son as a scapegoat for his feral destruction. Even Rian shifts uncomfortably on the bench. Rory's nostrils flare and he clenches his jaw. But behind the anger flooding through him, his eyes glistened. Guilt, heartache, grief teemed in his eyes. Freya wants to reach out to him, to tell him he's not the one to blame. That he never was for all those years of Aaron reacting in spite of Rory. Aaron knew the only way to hurt Rory is to hurt others. But Freya kept her hand loosely on Merlin's clammy hand as he spoke. I found him in his room, still seething with rage. The study we were in was ripped apart, torn to shreds after my magic released him. I acted like I was coming back to him of my own free will, and that the reason I let you escape was to keep you away from the castle, and trap you. I told him a fake location that you're hiding at far away from this cavern. I told him I was done with you and that I only served him, and he gave me what I needed to know. The story he weaved was that you, his eyes remain at Rory's, betrayed the kingdom. That before you fled, you unleashed your powers on the village. I couldn't figure out if anyone believed Aaron. The fairies know you. They know you wouldn't do that. Rory lets out a low breath, pulling back the emotions racking his face. He's losing his grip on control, attacking the village like that. He's unstable. He could do it again. Fear slides down Freya's spine. The longer they're in hiding, the more likely the chances there could be nothing left by the time they arrive back. Merlin's head tilts down slightly, not having enough strength to fully nod at Rory's assumption. His voice quieter. We were planning to stay and monitor him. I was already planning to break the bond before we left. Before my father died. He had been working on a potion to dissolve the tie with Aaron. Although his version failed, Aaron destroyed all of my father's work. Freya realizes that's why his potions lab was tucked in the woods with protective wards against it. An invisible sanctuary safe from Aaron. The last bit of color lingering in Merlin's face paled. But then Aaron gave me an order. One without room for compromise or argument that would prove my allegiance to him. I took the potion in front of him and felt the eternal bond between us break. Freya's hand tightens around his. What was the order? He told me to kill you and Rory. The air in the room turns icy, and Freya's blood goes cold. Aaron wants Merlin to kill them, and he thought Merlin wouldn't be able to refuse. If Merlin didn't have the potion. If he failed at breaking the bond. Rory's eyes darken, glancing between Merlin and Freya as if there is a chance he will follow through with Aaron's command. All of this is a ploy for Merlin to carry out the order, but Rory's eyes flick to Merlin's wound. Proof that Merlin isn't there to hurt them. That Merlin is in fact on their side. When Aaron realized what I'd done, he lashed out. I ran, but his power wrapped around my leg and pulled me toward him. He tried to leech my powers. My life. I had just enough left to get out of his grip and Rianne's hands don't catch him in time as he falls, and Freya flings out her arms to soften the blow against the rocky cavern ground, catching him right before his back slumps to the ground. Not that he would have felt the impact as he's already unconscious. Rianne helps Freya hold him up, and Rianne's steely glare looks at Merlin in concern. She turns to Lily. Her voice is sharp and urgent. You said you can ease his pain, so do it. Now. Freya flinches at Rianne's harsh tone, but it pulls Lily out of her trance of the horrors replaying in her mind. She wraps her hands around Merlin's crushed leg. The healing blue haze radiates from her hands and sweat drips from her brows, as she strains to release Merlin from pain. Her hands work on the bruises, the shattered bone. Her brows knit together in frustration when she can't heal him. That's all I can do, Lily whispers defeatedly. The glow dims around his ankle as her hands retreat. And to everyone's surprise, Rianne mutters, "Thank you." An unfamiliar sincereness laced into the words. Freya looks into Rianne's sapphire eyes, darker than Lily's, but the telltale sign of healing abilities. Freya can't help the curiosity of why Rianne didn't offer to heal Merlin. Rory stares at his friend that betrayed him, that kept secrets from him for so many years. The hostility Rory had toward Merlin vanishes, and he stands striding to where Rianne and Freya kept Merlin propped up. Rory leans down and shrugs Merlin's arm over his shoulders, and carries him to the sole cot in the corner of the cavern. He lays him out, bundling one of the quilts under Merlin's smashed leg to elevate it. forgiveness in each movement. Lily follows, placing her hands on Merlin once more, this time over his heart. His jagged breathing relaxes and his face clams as he drifts into a painless sleep. She seems exhausted when she rejoins them by the fire. Her tired eyes stare blankly into the flames. Freya sure the images of those she healed, and couldn't linger in her mind. Freya glances to Merlin. Will he be okay? Lily's eyes don't falter from the flames. Yes, but he needs time to rest. Aaron's magic is hard to break through when he uses wards against healing. And when Merlin broke that bond, I wasn't in the castle and I could feel it. She shudders at the memory, and Freya does as well at the thought. Rory sits by Freya on the bench, his voice on edge. Everyone in the village is defenseless now, considering how Aaron reacted when they left. His reaction to Merlin breaking the bond will be catastrophic. Freya looks at the faces of her friends surrounding her, all of them drained of their powers. Even if they left right now, they wouldn't be able to protect the village. Rian seems to be thinking the same. I hate to admit it, we're all too weak to stand a chance against Aaron. We should sleep and wait until morning to decide what we'll do. Silence follows Rian's suggestion. With Merlin unconscious, the others aren't quite sure how to interact with Rian, especially Freya. Merlin and Rian are similar in the way they're both a few words. When they do speak, each word has a place and a purpose. Rory's eyes continue to blaze, but as he looks at his friends' faces, the sorrow and exhaustion, the refusal to rest recedes. Sleeping bags, blankets, and quilts are pulled out. Rian takes up residence near Merlin, and Lily and Daniel curl up together on the other side of the fire. Lily sinks into him for comfort, leaving Rory and Freya in the middle, near enough to the fire to be warmed by it. Their blankets inch from each other as the steady sounds of sleep from the others fill the cavern. Chapter 32 Midnight Nightmares. Freya faces away from Rory at first, but the anxiety inside her rises. Guilt for what happened to the innocent fairies forges a roaring ache in her at the loss. Lily's terrified look on her face when she thought about what she experienced at court, as she tried to heal as many fairies as she could. Merlin's crushed leg, the bruises wrapped around his leg. His pained expression as he explained to them what happened. Whatever Freya does, if she regains her powers and heals the split between the realms, it wouldn't be enough to make up for what the others went through. She twists under her blanket to face Rory. His eyes are already on hers. The low snores and breathing of her friends echo through the cavern, and Freya's thankful they're able to sleep. Freya whispers, "Do you think we'll be able to do this?" She knows Rory understood what she's talking about. If they'll be able to save the fairies, the realm from Aaron's wrath. He scoots closer. "I do, especially with your help." Freya purses her lips, the fear inside her rises. The steadily increasing doubt that she'll be able to help anyone. Her memories haven't held many answers, or at least useful answers to the issue at hand. They've actually caused the opposite, raising more questions and tensions between her friends. She barely has control over her powers and there's no time for training. If their safety rests on her. "You'll be able to do this," Rory says with casual confidence in her, soothing the thoughts racing through her mind that are easy to read on her face. Freya doesn't have the strength in her to reply, and inches closer to Rory so she doesn't have to strain her whisper too loudly. "Do you think Daniel will trust us?" "Trust me?" He barely said a word. The friend Freya made, separate from the ones who rescued her from the human realm and protected her identity from the court. This is the first time Daniel has seen her without the allure on her. He didn't say a word to her. Rory nods, his face resting in his arm curled up in place of a pillow. He just needs time. He's surprised, that's all. Everyone believes you've been dead for centuries. His wry smile at the end of his words almost makes her laugh out loud. "I'm sure the other fairies will be sorely disappointed when they realize I'm not," Freya jokes, or at least attempts to make her words sound like one. Light-hearted, despite the fact that there is truth to her words. After the lies Aaron has spun, about both her and Rory, many fairies might in fact be not just disappointed, but furious with her when they find out she's alive. A low chuckle escapes from Rory's lips. "They'll be fools if they even think of crossing you." Freya rolls her eyes but smiles all the same. The lull of sleepiness spreads across her, and her eyes start to close. The last thing she sees before they shut is Rory's face, his eyes also succumbing to exhaustion. And then darkness. Nightmares interlace with each other. Aaron in his beast form. His talons tear at Rory as she is pinned against the wall, unable to move or help. Only scream for Aaron to stop as who he rips at changes from Rory to Lily to Merlin. Flames erupt around the room, and Freya smells the burning and screeches around her, drowned out by Aaron's laughter and then her own screams. She jolts awake, strands of hair cling to her face from the cool sweat dripping from her forehead. Her breathing ragged, as if her screams were coming out of her the whole time. Not just in the dream. Rory sleeps soundly across from her, his face peaceful. Freya stares at him, unsure of when the next time he will look this at ease again. She scans the cave, the only source of light the glow from the dim fire in the middle of the cavern. Chilling through her loose clothes still borrowed from Rory. She pulls the thin quilt tight around her, but her shiver remains. She peeks at the others around her. The outline of Merlin's chest rising and falling softly. Rian next to him, still as a brick in her sleep. Shadows of Lily and Daniel intertwine with each other. A light snore escaping from Daniel. Freya looks at the inky, unending cave ceiling above her that disappears into darkness. She feels wide awake after the nightmare, but she can't bear to wake them up. Their exhaustion from the stress and pain luring all of them into a deep sleep. After what they witnessed in the village, she thought the others would be fighting nightmares as well. And maybe they are. But after years of dealing with Aaron, watching him torment others for his own pleasure, they've learned how to control the terror. Freya hasn't. A tear slips down her cheeks, thinking of all that has happened. Her friends getting hurt, Rory's shredded chest, Merlin's crushed leg, the initial feelings of betrayal by Merlin and then him breaking the bond to protect them. Lily being forced to run from the home that kept her safe for centuries from her family. Even Daniel, innocent in all of this, dragged into it now. His life at risk the moment he joined them in that cave. A sob escapes through Freya, and she covers her mouth with her hand. Her shoulders shake and she wraps the other arm around herself to try and keep still. She couldn't wake the others, not when her pain is less than theirs. Her pain comes from guilt, from the thought of her friends being hurt for her sake. Innocent lives snuffed out without a second thought. All because of her. She shuts her eyes, squeezing them together to keep the tears inside. To keep them from spilling over her face. To stop the sobs racking through her, making her bones ache at the force of them. She feels a strong warm hand slide around her. Another wipes the hot tears streaming down her face. She peeks through the wetness of her tears and sees Rory's sleepy eyes searching hers. No judgment in his eyes, only sadness mingling with worry. Her first instinct is to pull away, to recede into herself, and handle the crushing grief and guilt alone. Like she's always done. To put up barriers around herself, blocking out anyone if they get too close to her. She doesn't want Rory to see her for who she truly is. Someone who is weak. Someone who isn't sure they can handle this. For him to truly know her. But as his hands continue to wipe the tears, he doesn't question her or look at her with pity. Worry, yes, but not pity. He lets her cry, and she tries her hardest to keep the sounds minimal. To not wake those around her, sleeping away the terribleness of the day. She allows herself to be pulled into him, burying her head in his chest. She tells herself it's to muffle the sounds of her crying, that it could have been anyone and she would have done the same. But in the moment after he shared his life, his weaknesses with her, she doesn't feel judged or less than in his arms. She feels held by him, comforted in the darkest parts of her soul. Parts of her she doesn't even know yet reach out to his touch, feeling the safety Rory provides. His strong arms weave around her, his calloused hands stroke her hair, her back, holding her tight as her shoulders heave and the bottled-up emotions take hold of Freya. All of her life feeling alone, and now she's surrounded by people she loves. Even in the short time she's known them, she feels seen by them, feels understood in ways she never imagined could be possible. Everything changes in such a short amount of time. Her human life she experienced completely separate from the person she's becoming, the Fae she wants to be, that she's not sure will be enough when it comes down to it, when the time arrives to kill Aaron, to bring the faltered realms back together. She hears Rory's soft whisper against her. You are safe, you are safe. He repeats the words in her ear, an understood promise in them, that he'll be the one to protect her. But that's not what she's worried about. Through the sobs she breathes. It's my fault that everyone's hurt. It's my fault they were killed. She can't bring herself to say the defenseless villagers, innocently going about their lives. He pulls her face back away from his chest. His hands cupped around her cheeks, his eyes staring into hers. She wants to hide, to pull away from the utter vulnerability of him seeing her for who she truly is. Scared, weak, unable to protect those closest to her. The opposite of what he's done his entire life. It's not your fault, Freya. We want you here. I want you here. The intensity in his eyes shows the truth of his words, the sincerity in them, the depth of how much he loves her, and how he wants her to have the choice of the life she wants to live. Whether it's with him or not, he wants her to be happy. She can't answer him, She can only stare back into his emerald eyes, hoping she's able to communicate the impact of his words, how much they mean to her. The sadness lingers in her, but her sobs weaken. Her breathing becomes more even and the ache in her chest lightens. Her eyes still glisten, her cheeks stained with tears. He pulls her closer, her face reconnecting with the inviting warmth of his chest. His lips softly press against her brow, and she lets her body be swallowed up by his. The comfort of warmth and comfort in the cool dampness of the cave. His touch warms her both physically and emotionally. She closes her eyes, and before she drifts back to sleep, his faint whisper brushes her ear. We'll protect them, all of them. Together. Freya doesn't wake up the rest of the night. Chapter 33 New Allies. Freya stirs awake as she begins to hear the others shuffling around, footsteps carefully walking around her. She feels the warmth of the fire before she opens her eyes, the slight clang of glasses and cookware. Her eyes open, groggy and swollen from crying the night before. Rory is already up, sitting by the fire, helping Lily make breakfast from the small reserve of food. From the smell wafting from the large pot over the fire, it seems stew is for breakfast. She glances at Rory, wondering if anyone saw them tangled together or if he moved before the others woke up. His eyes look tired but bright. She wonders if he fell back asleep while she was cocooned in his arms, or if he stayed awake the whole night, waiting for her nightmares to return. He offers Freya a genuine smile, one of knowing, and of comfort. The lack of curiosity and comments from Lily tells her that Rory must have strategically separated her from him before the others woke up. Freya is grateful, not ready for the answers that would be expected from her, especially considering Merlin slept so close to them, completely oblivious. Freya isn't sure what to make of it, of the small piece that Rory was able to give her. Then her head whirls to the abandoned cot where Merlin slept, the dark-haired male no longer in bed, but sitting by the fire. Life returned to him, a stark contrast to the drained look he had yesterday. His pant leg is rolled up, the bones no longer crushed, swollen but healing. The bruises lace around his ankle to his knee still, but rather than the pitch-black shade, they're faded purple. Relief floods through Freya. The tightness in her chest releases. Merlin will be okay, he's healing fast. Rianne sips her wine, and Freya's not surprised to see her drinking in the morning. She's also not surprised to see that Lily is as well. Freya stretches, her body stiff and tense. The ache of sleeping on the hard ground groaned against her muscles as she stood, joining them by the fire. The aroma of the stew fills the air, and Freya's stomach grumbles as it reaches her nose. Her strength is low, exhaustion still lingering in her, especially after extending her power at Rory right after the burst of energy toward Aaron. In the moment with Rory, she knew he wouldn't hurt her. Her power that threw him back wasn't self-defense, but a distilled anger inside her. Or maybe it wasn't rage that fueled her. How close he was to her. How she could feel his power rippling from his body to hers. His teasing smile grew closer to her. She shuts out the thoughts. She doesn't have time to think about this right now. Not about the way his arms wrapped around her during the night. Not about the steady rise of his chest she felt against her cheek, calming her as she slept. Not about the soft kiss he placed on her forehead. Him wiping away her tears. Not now. She pushes the thoughts further and further. There are more important things to worry about. The villagers, Aaron, her memories, finding the life sources. Many other things than Rory. Lily hands her a bowl brimming with stew, and it takes Freya less than a few seconds for the bowl to be empty. Lily refills her bowl, handing her a glass of water as well, not muttering a word. Her eyes still swimming with the images of the burned fairies. Freya attempts a comforting smile at Lily. The sad smile Lily returns nearly breaks her heart. After the 2 bowls and refreshments, Freya feels better, like she can handle the day, at least physically. Her emotions are still battling each other inside. Lily sits on the other side of her, Daniel beside her, a loving hand placed on her back. He still hasn't uttered a word to Freya. Guilt twists in her stomach as she looks at Daniel, dragging him into this mess. Daniel, Freya starts, not sure where to go from there. There are too many things to say, to explain. She doesn't know where to start. He turns toward her. The apprehension in his eyes from the day before is gone. A new emotion, determination, was replaced in his soft emerald eyes, similar in color to Rory's and her own. An elemental fae. Lily explained who you are, Daniel says. The lightness in his voice that always greeted her is absent. That you've been alive in the human realm this whole time. And that you're not the one that broke the 2 realms. She feels like there's a but coming. A reason why he doesn't trust her. That he sees her as someone who caused his lover pain. That caused his court pain. His words surprise as he continues, and she told me what all of you are trying to do. To bring the realms back together and rebel against Aaron. So Lily had told him everything. Freya lifts her chin. That's our plan. There are some missing pieces still that she needs to find, starting with the life sources. Aaron's searching for a way to bridge the realms as well. We need to find the life sources for the human and fairy realms before he does. Daniel's brows furrow and he opens his mouth, but Freya needs to tell him. She can't wait any longer. I'm sorry, Daniel. I'm sorry for lying to you. I'm sorry that you're in this mess now, and if you don't want to be a part of it, I understand. All eyes turn to the golden-haired fae, waiting for his response. Surprise covers his handsome features. You don't need to apologize, Freya. Her name sounds foreign on his lips. Strange that he knows who she truly is now after all those nights of laughing together with Lily. As for Aaron, I want him gone just as badly as the rest of you. He looks to the others, his eyes landing on Rory. I know Aaron is cruel what he's done to you over the years. For the longest time I've been quiet so my family and I would be safe. After what he did for the village. He shook his head, remorse on his face. I wish I would have done something years ago, but I'm ready to fight now. With all of you. Rory nods at him. There's nothing you could have done. He would have killed you without a second thought. We've all been trying to keep him at bay for years. The time for that is over. A sense of determination settles in the air. Their task at hand, to defeat Aaron after years of watching his destruction. Daniel turns back to Freya. Just so you know, your identity is no longer a secret. When Aaron burned the village and blamed it on Rory, he also blamed you. Telling everyone that you're back. The information ruminates in Freya's mind. The fairies believe she was the one to cause the sever. If they're angry enough, they might come looking for her. To settle an ancient score built on Aaron's lies. A secret hidden part of her. One that she can't bring herself to admit to anyone but herself. Worries that she was the one to destroy the tree of curiate. That she broke the ties to the human realm to protect the humans from Aaron's power. Sacrificing herself, her life along with it. She'll know when or if her memories return. Rian glowers at Freya from over the rim of her glass. Another confrontation Freya needs to prepare for. The resentment that boils inside the slender woman. The secrets hidden within her that Merlin is protective over. She clicks her tongue. How do you sleep, Freya? Freya tries to keep her expression under control. The question rotten with insinuation that she saw her and Rory together. Freya keeps her face blank, matching the same apathy on Merlin's. Her eyes steady on Rian. As well as anyone can sleep on this ground. Rian purses her lips and Freya hopes she doesn't reveal the information that would hurt Merlin more than any external would. Rian continues to stare and then turns away. Boredom covering her face. Be nice, Rian, Merlin warns, his voice low. Not as hoarse from the pain as he sounded yesterday. Rian rolls her eyes at him and takes another sip of wine. There's no time for pettiness. Rory shoots a pointed glare at Rian. We have a lot to do. Rian arches an eyebrow at his deflection. But Daniel saves them from another biting remark from her. Where do we start? We're going to the tree of curiate, Rory answers. Merlin, you brought the potion, right? Merlin nods, pulling out the tiny vial of swirling azure liquid. Freya cringes as she remembers the terrible taste of it, stinging her throat on the way down and transporting her to secret places in her memories. Perfect. Rory stands looking at each of them. We leave in an hour. Chapter 34. The tree's tether. After scarfing down the rest of breakfast, the group readies themselves to fly to the tree of curiate. Best case scenario of the day is that none of Aaron's loyalists will be searching for them. At least not in the part of the forest they'll be in. Freya doesn't let herself feel the fear twisting in her. For her friend's safety and of what she'll see in her memories this time. The dread is overpowered only by her need to protect her friends that have spent so much time shielding her from Aaron's wrath. Regaining her memories and finding the life sources are the least she can do in return. But she wishes she could do more, to help heal the years of manipulation and rage that Aaron put them through. The mere thought of Aaron pushes her worry out of her, replacing it with white-hot rage and determination to destroy him. She nestles into Rory's arms as they fly, the wind whipping around them. He hasn't uttered a word to her yet, not since the night they had, the moments they shared together. He glances down at her a few times, a slight question in his eyes. Freya can't tell if he's waiting for her to cry again, to break down, or if he's wondering what her feelings are for him after the first time she willingly leaned into him, letting herself be vulnerable in front of him. In front of anyone really. Besides Lily. I'm okay, she says quietly to Rory, not sure if the others can hear them. I'm ready to remember, to help. In her mind she adds, to become Fae again. The wish of it is too much for her to say. They haven't figured out how she can regain her powers fully, besides waiting for them to slowly leak out of her. But her essence, despite growing in the fairy realm, is still human. Different only in her powers, in her immortality. But, even in that immortality she still ages, reliving her human life over and over again. A true curse for a Fae. She hadn't thought about what those lives were like, if she would remember them like her fairy memories. But, Rory had said that the time between the realms works differently after the link broke. How long she's been trapped in her human form she's not sure. But she's ready to break out of the cycle. Become Fae not just to regain her powers, but to stay with her friends, to be one of them. Merlin flies ahead of them, scouting the area before they enter. His strength seems to have returned fully, even with the bruises that brandish his leg. Hidden under his dark pants, Daniel trails behind, making sure they aren't being followed. Rianne and Lily take up the sides, Rory and Freya slightly ahead of them, forming a diamond of protection around Freya. Again, she feels the familiar twinge of guilt of her friends' willingness to risk their safety for her. She hopes one day she can do the same for them. Even Rianne is on edge, listening to the sounds of the lively forest for enemies. Freya can't imagine it's for her sake, most likely for Merlin's. The same protectiveness he has for her, she has for him. Her sapphire eyes scan the area. Freya expected Rianne's wings to be similar to Lily's, but they are different. The ends are sprinkled in blue with a deep russet color at the center. They continue to fly in silence until a clearing starts to break up the tree line. As they grow closer, Freya sucks in a breath at the sight of it. Unlike the lush forest and beautiful meadows she's seen before, the clearing resembled the opposite of life. The barren area, dull ashy ground, the few rotted trees with no leaves, the giant tree in the middle. The clearing resembles eternal emptiness. Death. Freya inhales a sharp breath at the sight of it. A deep sadness fills her heart as she sees the once magnificent oak tree she saw in her memory stretch out before her. Rory dips lower, and the overwhelming stench of rotting overtakes her senses. It takes everything in her to not vomit in his arms. Her heart breaks for the powerful tree. The one that once stood powerful and strong. The white bark and bright leaves that glimmered in the sun, now are nothing more than an inkly rotten black. The trunk distorted and the branches twisted. Completely desolate of any leaves. Completely devoid of life. Heart sinks further and further into her chest as she stares at it, the absolute destruction of it. And then she feels it, like the tree is calling out to her, whispering her name even in death. Rory gently sets her down on the rocky ground. Even the wind is still. The bright sun rays are less magnificent. A chill resounds around the tree, the deceased magic of it impacting the entire clearing. The others land gracefully around them, their faces twisting in unease at the sight of the clearing. The ominous sense of nothingness around them. Lily's shoulders shudder at it and Rianne's expression is a mask of apathy with darkness burning underneath. Freya can't read her expression, the look on her face as she stares at the tree. Rianne quickly straightens and pulls her eyes away, pointing them at Freya. So how does this work? Rianne's sharp voice questions her. Merlin steps in, angling himself between his sister and Freya. He pulls the vial out of his pocket. She takes this and it allows her to remember. His amethyst eyes land on Freya. Are you sure you want to do this? It's not doubt in his voice but genuine worry, giving her the choice to back out. But Freya knows there is no other choice. Even if she doesn't want to, which she does, she couldn't turn her back on the people surrounding her. The innocent villagers. She wouldn't leave them to fend for themselves, not when she's been the cause of all of it. She knows deep in her heart that it's not truly her fault, that Aaron is the one to blame. His cruelty and disregard for lives caused by rage and an unquenchable thirst for power. But she was the catalyst for his outburst. And she needs to fix it, fix what her presence has caused for everyone in the realm. Freya nods at Merlin, taking a step closer to him. Rory almost steps with her, and then pauses, seeming to realize what he was about to do and stays put. Lily notices and raises an eyebrow at him, more out of curiosity than judgment. At least her mood is shifting upward, away from the despair she's been experiencing. Freya realizes they never explained what they were doing in the cave when all of them found her on top of him. Rory and she were shocked by their quick arrival, by the guests they brought with them that they didn't say they were trying to access Freya's powers. Her cheeks flush with embarrassment as she thinks about it. Familiar guilt returns. It was the first thing Merlin saw after breaking the bond. That explains why he's so reserved around her now, not letting his fingers touch hers as he passes the vial toward Freya. He has a slight limp still, and Freya tries not to think of his leg under his pants, the bruise is slowly healing. Gripping the vial in her hands, Freya turns to her friends. I want to do this. I want to help you, all of you. She gives a pointed look to Rianne, who immediately turns her head from Freya's gaze. Her red lips in a thin line. Creases form in Rory's forehead, knowing what she's about to undergo. The memory that revealed itself to her last time, of Merlin's feelings. The mental anguish and pain the potion causes that he can't protect her from. But Freya has changed since she arrived. She's grown stronger, able to endure more than she thought. The problems of her human life seem meager compared to what's at stake in the new life she's still carving out for herself. She looks at Merlin and softly says, "Thank you. Thank you for bringing the vial, for breaking the bond with Aaron, for still saving them when he knew Aaron could have easily hurt Rianne in retaliation. His other family is already gone, his mother and father. His sister is the only one left in his life." Freya doesn't take the risk Merlin took lightly. The coolness in his amethyst eyes melt at her words, and he reaches a hand to her, placing it on her shoulder. His thumb strokes against the worn fabric. "Thank you, Freya." He drops his hand, easing back the intensity in his eyes. "If it gets too much, we'll try to pull you out of it." Freya gives him a weak smile, wanting to believe her words but not sure if she can. "I'll be fine." She lifts the vial to her lips, ready to take it when she feels a tug inside her, a tether to the tree, whispering to her to get closer in a deep, otherworldly invisible voice, promising that it will reveal the secret she needs. The others don't seem to hear it, all of them staring at her, wondering why she paused. Rory steps forward. "What is it?" Freya can't shake the feeling of it. "I think it's calling out to me." All of her friends look at the tree, as if they're waiting to hear the call of it as well. Their confused faces prove that they cannot. The pull of the tree pulls Freya in, and she finds her feet walking to it. The feeling of death grows stronger with every step. She reaches her hand out to feel the tree, the vial grasped in her other hand. She places her hand on the rotting bark, but her hand doesn't stop at the hard edge of the trunk. Her fingers push through to the edge of her wrist, the feeling spongy and soft, like reaching into someone's flesh. The pain of the breakage of the realms courses through her, as if she's feeling the heart of the tree. The loneliness reaches deep inside Freya, rattling her bones and soul, unable to bear the weight of the death and hopelessness coursing out of the tree. She tries to pull her hand out, but it stays there, the feeling overwhelming her. She can't contain it anymore, the feelings. She shrieks and tries to pull her hand out, but her arm goes limp, her body goes limp. And then she feels two strong males behind her, pulling her away and keeping her head up. Rory and Merlin grunting as they try to pull her hand out. The tree whispers for her to drink the liquid, to take the potion, to listen to the secrets it has to tell her. She feels the glass vial in her hand and blindly raises it to her mouth, swallowing the contents. Chapter 35, Gleamed Power. Freya feels the effects of the potion course through her as the grief of the tree envelopes her, and the world dims. She travels through the murky darkness of her memories, the same as last time but with an added direction from the tree, still whispering in her mind, guiding her to the memory she needs back. The tree of curated doesn't need Freya's words to understand what she's searching for, what she needs. It reaches inside of her just like her hand inside it, linking the two of them. She doesn't feel the strange sensation of her hand in the tree anymore. Instead of feeling entirely separate from her body, as she floats through the void of darkness. And then light blooms and she stands in the clearing. The one that was alive, not yet wrecked by destruction. The area blossoms with life and light and powerful magic fill the world around her. She feels the power of both realms flow through the air. Freya looks around, feeling like a ghost in the memory. She spots a young girl with dark, wild curls. Her younger self, much younger than the memory she's already seen. Freya's a child. Her child self runs through the clearing, looking behind her and laughing. She stops as she sees the tree and peers around the clearing. Freya watches her young self approach ever so carefully to the tree, like she's not supposed to be there, and Freya realizes she probably isn't. A child so close to the tree that breathes life into the realms breathes magic. Young Freya nears the tree, entranced by it. Freya steps closer to her, wondering what's about to happen. Her younger self stands at the trunk, the roots growing out of it thicker than the child's arms and legs. Almost her entire body. Young Freya looks around once more, checking for someone to come find her, to scold her and pull her away from the tree. But no one appears and young Freya touches the tree, her hand disappearing inside the trunk. Freya tries to warn her, her voice nothingness, but her young self doesn't seem affected by the action, rather enthralled by it. Curious. A flash of green light erupts from the tree, followed by a flash of white light bursts out, and then soaks into younger Freya, absorbed by her. She stumbles back, but her hand remains pressed into the trunk of the tree. A glow ripples around her. Not the green light that she's seen before, but a halo of white light surrounding her. Then the tree releases her hand, and even in her memory, Freya can feel the power radiating off the tree. She feels the crack inside her open wider, still not splitting fully open, but reacting to the immense power of the tree. Her younger self turns, and for a moment, Freya's eyes widen as it seems like her younger self is looking directly at her. As if in some odd way, the power the tree gave her made it possible to see her. But then, the child's attention is drawn back to the forest by someone calling out her name. She runs back into the line of trees the way she came. A trail of light following her the whole way. The vision ripples and closes in on itself, blanketing Freya in inky darkness. Only a shadow of the tree remains. Overwhelming power seethes from it, but not just the realms. Energy from solar and lunar power as well. In the murky void, the past, present and future scatter before her. Freya can hardly keep up with the images that flow in front of her. Not just her memories but the history of the realm. One after the other flashes in front of her, and she reaches out to the images, wanting them to slow so that she can understand. She cries out, "Wait, wait! I need to see." Her words are noiseless, sucked into the vacuum of the strange vortex of memories. The tree listens and the bleak darkness opens up into a new memory. Still in the same open field, the tree still its magnificent self, the white bark gleaming from the sunlight, but an ominous feeling stretches around her. She knows something bad is about to happen. She braces herself for what she's about to witness. The Freya in her memory looks the same age as she does now. Freya stands at the tree, flustered and panicking, fear wide in her eyes. From the outskirts of the treeline, the Freya watching her memory sees two figures run toward the tree. A man and a woman, both beautiful and older than Freya. The woman has emerald eyes and the man's glimmer with sapphire. She sees features that resemble her own on both of them, the dark brown curly hair of the woman, the cheekbones of the man, the way his chin rests on his face. Freya's heart thunders as she realizes who they could be. Why they're rushing to Freya with that urgency. She's watching her parents. Tears well in Freya's eyes, seeing them for the first time, at least in this life. She always wanted to ask Rory what happened to them the night he told her she was wearing her mother's wedding dress. She knew the answer, knew why they didn't mention them. Why hasn't she met them in the fairy realm? They aren't there anymore. They're dead. The understanding that she's in a memory leaves Freya as she runs toward them. Her pounding feet against the earth feel heavy, like she's wading through the ocean. But still, she wants to touch them, to hear their voices, to feel close to them. She runs as fast as she can as they also run to Freya in the memory. Both of them were worried and screaming. They run and run. Freya chases after them. The glow she had seen in her child self now flickers around Freya. Her face is also in panic as she sees her parents approach, and screams something back. But Freya can't hear it, can't make out the words that are escaping their mouths. Freya turns to the tree, her light erupting from her as she places her hands on the trunk. She swears she can hear the whispers from the tree, fear and warning in the invisible voice. Something is terribly, terribly wrong. Her parents reach Freya, encasing their hands around her, holding her. Then, a flash of burning amber erupts from the other end of the treeline. Freya realizes. Aaron must be there, must have found them. This must be when the link breaks. This is it. The red flash bellows around the tree and her parents are thrown back, hitting the ground hard, making Freya run even harder to them, as if she could help them, as if she could hold them. But when she reaches out to them, her hands are merely shadows that go through them. She turns to where the redness is coming from, but the vibrant light masks the person behind it. Aaron, it has to be Aaron. Although the energy looks different, feels different, from the sinisterness of Aaron's aura. Still angry with rage flowing through it, but no flames. No beast form. Dense red mist and shadows circle around the tree. Freya caught in the middle of it. Her face stuck in true terror, her mouth screaming but no sound coming out of it. Freya looks down at her parents, stunned from the blast. Not dead. She could see their bodies ebbing and flowing with breath. This isn't where they die. Unless Aaron finishes them off after he destroys the tree. It doesn't make sense to Freya, if he's the one to ruin the tree. Perhaps his target is Freya, and the link breaking is collateral damage. An ironic turn of events. But as Freya continues to scream, Freya pushes the questions to the side. There will be time to answer them later. She looks down at her parents one last time. Before she can decide otherwise, She tears away from them and runs toward Freya trapped against the tree in the same binding mist used against her in Aaron's study. Freya feels the raw power of the amber mist, but knows she can't fight it. Can't stop it, history happening right in front of her. Freya starts to disappear, fading and fading. And then in a final squeeze, a final flash of the ruby light, she disappears and a thunderous crashing sound echoes through the realm. Freya is blown off of her feet as a sonic boom roars. The first time something physically affects her while in a memory. The feeling of death floats from the tree, bloodret travels through the tree's bark. Crimson first and then turning onyx black. Killing it. The wide leaves shrivel and fall as sickness spreads over the clearing. Freya swears she can hear shrieking from the tree that pierces her soul. She can feel the pain of the tree. Feel all of it, the breaking, the power of it leached out of the tree. Like her insides are being ripped apart and her soul torn into two. The power of the tree surges to the person who gleamed the tree of life. For a moment Freya feels like she is dying too. Unsure if the shrieking is coming from the tree or her. She falls to the ground, her vision going black, and feels herself being swept back through the dream world. Her mind's eyes close to it now as she returns to her body. She breathes in and feels herself screaming and gasping, thrashing about. Her hand is still trapped inside the tree. A tendril of whisper from the tree says, "Now you know." The tree releases her hand from the trunk. It feels light after the immensity of the burden of pain she experienced, and her hand falls limply to her side. Freya feels hands shaking her, but her eyes remain closed. The feeling of death still inside her. The voices of her worried friends are merely muffled sounds swirling around her. Enough life and awareness return to Freya, enough to get the rasp out the words. "I saw it, the breakage. I didn't do it." Near her ear Rianne's voice. "Who did?" Freya feels unconsciousness sweep through her, but before she goes into it, "Aaron, it was his power but it felt different." Her words cut off as she succumbs to the darkness.